Hello and welcome to Dice Encounters, and today we're talking about secondary objectives in D&D. So yes, as that Goldeneye gag shows you, this episode is about secondary objectives. You may recognize them from video games where you have to minimize scientist casualties or find discs and put them in things. I don't know, I haven't played it in a while, but I used secondary objectives in my Ravnica campaign that I did last year because it was very mission based, and I thought I'm going to give the players a quest, but I'm also going to give them sort of special other sort of things that they have to do and objectives, and they could be for the whole party. Maybe the quest giver will give them and tell the whole party you also need to do this, and we really would like you to be able to do it this way. Or they are specific mission objectives for each player, so that each player has a different way to tackle the mission, so they have to kind of balance that as well as the whole mission as a whole with the party. And what really made this possible was in Ravnica, each player is part of a guild, and it's like you're employed by the guild, and the guilds are all different and they have different objectives and purposes and ways that they see the world. And yeah, actually it is very similar to alignment, except the players are employed by their alignment to be their alignment. So their specific objectives can actually help them sort of play their character to the beliefs that they say that they have. So what I did was I had the mission, the quest, and then I had the secondary objectives for the party, and then I had the guild specific objectives for each player, and then I would have kind of bonus objectives, so if they did something exceptionally well, for example. And I think this actually was quite a big success. I mean, it was really fun doing the mission. That took kind of 2, 3, 4 sessions, and then after the session you'd have we would have like a score screen, not really, but I would kind of list off the bonus objectives that they did and didn't do. Players could see how much they pleased their guild, how much they stuck to their character, how well they did the mission, any sort of risks they took that were rewarded, any things that were, kind of just didn't really go that well, but, hey ho, that's D&D. And it kind of felt like this kind of, alignment 2.0, because, if a player makes a character and they're like, I'm a part of the Azorius Senate, which is essentially the law-abiding, sort of lawful, good, guild, that player gets objectives, which is about upholding the law and being basically a cop. So it kind of keeps that player wanting to keep playing the character that they wanted to create, and that kind of lawful side of it really comes in. So how does it work? How do you give players secondary objectives? Well, for me, each mission had a quest giver, like a guy who worked for the Office of the Guild Pact, who would give them missions, and he would just give them a briefing, and then potentially they would say, we want you to do it this way. So for the sample adventure in the book, Krenko's Way, one of the sort of secondary objectives, although they don't call it that, that's my thing. They say that there's a time element, you have to do this thing as fast as possible, and if things don't happen, things will start to happen if you don't complete it in time. But there's nothing really to enforce that apart from just telling the players they did a shit job if they took too long. So actually giving them a reward, an XP, for doing it better and doing it how the quest giver wants to do it, that's actually, I think, a better way. It's positive feedback. The quest giver can also highlight the specific points where different guilds would be interested in. So, for example, the Azorius Senate player, if there is a hostage situation going on, then they would probably know that that's something that they need to sort out. That's something that their guild would be very interested in them having to sort out, and minimising casualties there, and sort of, telling off the people who have done the crime and rescuing the people. However, in my party there was 2 players in the same guild, so I managed to find a way for the party to go through the headquarters of that guild, so that somebody, an NPC from that guild, could give them both kind of a secret special objective to acquire these artifacts that they would like to use. But the players themselves were kind of different sides of that guild. They had different priorities even within that space. So the way that they tried to tackle the secret objective was different as well. But it also helps you to inform your quest design as well. So I've got my cop player, so he needs some criminal to bust or some people to help. I've got my 2 guys from the Cynic Combine, which is kind of like a scientific nature experimenty kind of group. So they've got their secret mission to acquire these death priest staffs, which will help them with their experiments. Then I've got my other character, my fourth player, who is part of the Gruul clan, but he's part of the kind of druidic diplomatic circle. So I put in a chance for him to be able to negotiate a peace and really sort of get props for doing a really good kind of diplomatic mission. So how did I do it? So I'll give you my method, I guess, my way of making the missions themselves and coming up with these secondary objectives and the main objectives and all this sort of stuff. So number one, first thing I did was come up with a 3-act mission structure. Kind of goes like, first act is kind of a mission briefing, it's an introduction, the party gets told what they need to do. Act 2 is where they can have to travel to a location or they're gathering information. It's that kind of middle bit where the meat of the actual mission gets done. And Act 3 is where the mission is resolved and it's the finale and things get wrapped up. So for example, in my mission, the Cruel Rebellion, the players are briefed in Act 1. They have to go and sort out a dispute between the Golgari swarm and the Crawl, who are these insectoid guys who are part of the Golgari, but they want to be taken more seriously and be like a key player. They don't want to be like this minor race. Act 2 is them travelling to the Undercity where the Golgari are. They go to a Golgari mansion, which is all creepy and sort of fungusy and lots of centipedes and stuff, and they meet with the Golgari people, and there's like a social encounter and they get given more information on what they need to do. And then Act 3 is them travelling on foot in the Undercity to a kind of a dungeon, which is the Crawl Cavern, where the Crawl people are, and they have the ability to get some treasure and save these hostages and ultimately negotiate with this Crawl priest leader. So the second stage of the mission creation process is to create the bonus objectives now for the different acts. Now I normally did them for Act 2 and 3 because in Act 1 there's nothing really going on, there's not really any kind of side quests to do, but they should kind of represent how the party should be tackling the mission, but also in ways that they can really excel. So for example, the bonus objectives in Act 2, when they're in the Golgari mansion, are that the representative likes the party overall, which means that more than half of their social tests were passed, and that the party finds and they take a Cruel Death Priest staff that's on display in the mansion, because that was a secret objective for the Simic Combine players. And then in Act 3, because it's a dungeon and there's lots of different ways to do it, there are 3 bonus objectives. The first one is to not spill any Crawl blood, because this is ultimately a diplomatic mission. We're there to kind of calm things down and re-patch up sort of tensions rather than making them worse. There is another Crawl Death Staff priest in one of the chambers that the players can also take for their bonus mission, and the rescue of the hostages and not causing them any harm and allowing them to be able to escape, which also means clearing the dungeon out of threats and making sure they can get back to wherever they need to be. So now we have our main second bonus objectives. Now we need to think of the guild specific objectives and how to implement them. So for my Azorius player, the kind of hook objective for this mission is the hostages. That should be his biggest priority apart from the main mission. The Gruul clan player's priority is to sort of do his work as a skilled diplomat, and then word will get back to his druidic circle about how great he is. And the Simic Combine hook is, of course, to relieve the Undercity of a couple of staffs, Death Priest staffs. And there are 3 overall in the adventure, 1 in the Minute Mansion, 1 in the dungeon, and 1 that the actual Death Priest has himself. So there's potential to get 3. Step 4 is to work out how many points of renown will be awarded at the end of the mission. This is kind of the points that you can get in your guild to level up in rank. So for me, I just did 1 point of renown for completing the mission as a whole, 1 point of renown for specific guild objectives, and then there's like an extra sort of 3rd point of renown if they do something super extra for their guild as well. And then the last step, step 5, is to assign XP to all the different objectives. So I still give XP for completing combat encounters, basically taking the XP worth of the creatures that they destroy, adding that up, giving that. If they manage, also social encounters as well will have a XP value. If they manage to get around it rather than solve it, it's half XP. And for this mission, as an example, I gave 500 XP for the main objective, 200 XP for the secondary objectives, and 100 XP for each point of renown. And this was for player level 3-ish. And that's it. That's secondary objectives in D&D. If you're working up your own campaign soon, why not try a mission-based structure? And then you can add in these secondary objectives and see what your players think. It's a really good way of making sure or encouraging players to play the way that you would like them to play. And I know that sounds a little bit too forceful, but I think it actually helped the players a lot kind of align with their characters, align with their guilds, and kind of remembering that the guilds are a thing, right? I mean, they're supposed to be employing the characters. If they leave the guild, if they get kicked out the guild, that's a big deal, right? So you want the characters to be like, well, you know, this is the easy path, but also, you know, I am a law-abiding Azorius Senate law mage as well, and I shouldn't forget that, because that's the flavour of the setting. And I know that in the Forgotten Realms, there's these other sort of institutions that you can be a part of that are also kind of the same thing. So maybe take this kind of structure and then put it in the Forgotten Realms as well. All right, everyone, that is it. That is secondary objectives in D&D. If you want to see more videos, I did a bunch ages ago. I'm trying to do some more, so do give me a subscribe if you want to see some more D&D DMing kind of videos. I'm just about to finish up Descent into Avernus. I'm going to be doing some content about that. I used Avernus as a sandbox. That was really cool. You can read about it on my blog, diceencounters.com, or you can wait for the video. So I will see you in the next one. Until then.